Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thursday Talks with Chug. Each week, we cover pressing topics that matter to you and your business. I'm Arianna Gonzalez from Chug Attorneys and CPAs, tuning in from our San Diego office. Please join me in welcoming attorney Jioselin Contreras and our Executive Director of Immigration, Carmen Lopez, from our headquarters in Los Angeles. Hi there, Carmen and Jioselin, and welcome.
Hello, Ariana.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Hello. Happy to
Thank
be
you for
here.
being here. For
Thanks.
today's topic, we will be talking about the L-1A visa. Just a quick disclaimer before we get started, this conversation is for informational purposes only. It does not create an attorney-client relationship. So if you do have questions, please comment them below or email us anytime at info@chug.com. So let's get right into it. Jioselin, can you tell me what are the key eligibility criteria for the L-1A visa?
Yes, I will, Ariana. Thank you for that question. So for an L-1A, it is an intercompany transferee, work position. So what this means is that there has to be a qualifying relationship with a company abroad and a related company in the US. And the relationship could be various type of relationships. And we usually confirm that with the client. And then, the most important part is that, aside from that, that the individual that's going to be transferred from the company abroad to the US has been in a managerial or executive position one of the last 3 years at the time of the filing. And then that the position, of course, meets the definition of executive and managerial.
So, Carmen, what are the key differences between an executive and managerial role under L-1A?
Yes, hi. Thanks for the question, Ariana. Absolutely. And this is basically what we're going to be covering today is basically there's various requirements, but this is one of the ones that is the most challenging with USCIS. I would say it's the one that gets scrutinized the most. So there are two types of applicants. Either you fit in as an executive capacity or you fit into a managerial capacity. So the executive capacity is a capacity where the individual who's been employed there abroad and is coming to the U.S. has been employed abroad and in a capacity that where they have wide discretion over decision making. They make executive decisions, things like goals and policies. The type of executive would be overseeing management. So the subordinates that would be under the direct supervision of the executive would be managers, other types of executives like VPs, directors. So that is an executive capacity. Okay. Now the other one is a manager capacity, but this one's twofold. You have two types of managers. One's a manager that oversees personnel. They oversee professionals, particularly people that require a bachelor's degree under their direct supervision. And that type of manager with employees has to have decision-making discretion, so ability to hire, fire, make decisions over their team. And that's basically the type of manager with a team. Now, the other one is called a functional manager. That is a manager that basically is in charge of a function of the business without doing the day-to-day themselves, but they have absolutely no subordinates at all. Like you can even have a hybrid, it'd be no subordinates at all. So those are the types of two types of executive and manager capacity. We'll talk about those a little more detail as this presentation goes along.
Really good to know. Thank you for breaking that down for us. Jioselin, so how could I clearly demonstrate that my role qualifies as a managerial or executive position?
Yes, great question, Ariana. So for managerial and executive, I'll give a few examples of normally the kind of type of evidence that we would be looking at to demonstrate, I guess Carmen mentioned for managerial that they oversee the team and they oversee a function or department or division. And then for executive, of course, that they, deal with the management policy making, right? So if we're doing managerial definition, usually if they have a team, they should be communicating with the team, right? So email communication, team meeting invitations, performance appraisals, right? So if you oversee the team's performance, you should be able to see how they're performing, if they're meeting their goals, if they're meeting their client expectations. And then also, if they approve any leave requests or salary compensation increase, if those are things that usually the manager oversees, those are the top of evidence that could demonstrate that they actually oversee the team, right? And then for executive, because they are dealing with management, a lot of the time they will be dealing with the policy making. So if they're checking in with their management to make sure that the policies are being implemented correctly, communication, so email communications, work product, meeting minutes, anything like that would be type of evidence that we would normally be able to include. And this is not all encompassing. It could vary based on client. You know, we have smaller clients, bigger clients. So, but it's kind of a few examples that could demonstrate the definition of manager and executive.
Wow, really good to know that info. So what level of decision-making authority must a manager have to qualify? Carmen, do you have any information on that?
Yeah, so a manager, basically they oversee either a division, a department, a function or component of a business. So the things that they would be doing are things like overseeing, reviewing, planning, coordinating. They're in charge of strategies, processes, and again, they have ability to make decisions like promote someone, demote someone, terminate someone, any kind of personnel issues they're in charge of. So their discretion is high because we don't want the USAs to believe that just they're merely a first line supervisor. So, you know, they have to primarily be performing duties that they make decisions over their department. You know, let's say they're in charge of marketing or finance, that they're making decisions to improve their department processes, strategies that are they're going to improve the processes. You know, and also again have ability to oversee their employees and make decisions over their employees without little supervision from above. Meaning, if they say, "I want to promote this person because they're doing very well, the productivity is high," that they have the ability to do it without much approval from above. And that's really what truly shows the authority and that they really are truly a manager.
Okay, good to know. Jocelyn, is there a minimum number of direct reports required for personnel managers?
That's a great question, Ariana. So for personal manager, so this would be the manager definition overseeing an actual team, right? And you know, there is not a set number, right? So if somebody were to look that up on USAS policy manual, there's not a specific number. It's really the need of being able to show that there is enough support for that manager. So, you know, as a manager, you are not going to be performing, you know, if they're involved in a client project, right? Their team, they're not going to be executing the actual client work, right? So there should be enough, you know, helps from direct reports on that team so that that manager is not executing day to day. So, you know, it would vary based on client, you know, sizing of the company. Some of them, they might not need, you know, extensive amount of reportees. Some larger clients will need that. So it would vary based on that, but there's not a specific need number. We work with the client on that specifically. We strategize. Something to keep into consideration now that we live in a much, you know, global kind of world where, you know, a lot of remote work is done, work, you know, where international work is done also as well. Something to consider is there are some times when companies, you know, because it's in intercompany visa, where they have companies abroad that they might have support with a company abroad. From subordinates, they might have some subordinates abroad in addition to US subordinates. So if something like that happens, there should always be enough support with their where the person is located in the US to have a team, right? So it could be a combination of abroad and in the US. Is just again make sure that there is enough support for that manager to execute.
Understood. So surely I would need evidence of managing these employees. So Carmen, what kind of documentation would be required to prove that I manage professional employees?
Right. So, managers I'd mentioned earlier is they basically are in charge of managing a function, component, division, or department. They also have discretion to hire and fire. So, keeping those two major requirements in mind when you are filing yourself as a manager capacity. Remember, professionals are the employees that they have to have under them. So, what kind of documents does immigration look for? They look for degrees, bachelor's degrees, for example. An associate's degree is not a bachelor's degree. So, the USCIS is really a stickler on making sure that not only does the job itself require a bachelor's, but that the individual has a bachelor's degree. So I'll give you an example. An accountant, you know, if you look at Department of Labor, they say that it's categorized as a job zone 4. So that is a person you could have under you, is an accountant. But if the person is more of a bookkeeper, that is not a job that is a professional capacity. So people like bookkeepers probably would be under the accountant. So in the organizational chart, you'll see the accountant under you, but a bookkeeper under the accountant. So degrees are one thing. Pay stubs, USCIS wants to make sure that they are employed. So abroad, for example, if you're showing your capacity abroad, you have to show the pay stubs of those subordinates. And in the US, you're going to explain, well, when I get there, I'm going to be a manager or I'm going to be an executive, and you have to provide the pay stubs already when you file the case for the people in the US. Other things you'd provide are anything to show they're managing, emails to show that they're making decisions, training your employees. You have reports, KPIs, work product. Maybe you're reviewing the work through a software. Maybe you're reviewing their work through emails. Maybe you're reviewing the work through phone calls. You would basically provide a letter describing, hey, we have calls Tuesdays, Thursdays at 10. I look at their status reports every day on Friday. And you provide evidence like that to demonstrate that you're overseeing those people. Other things are job descriptions for, of course, the applicant and their subordinates, to show that the duties that their subordinates are doing align with the goals of the L-1A applicant. So if you're a manager and you say you're in charge of marketing department, well, you should have marketing people under you, market research analysts and people like that can support and describe their job description to show that they support you as a marketing manager. So those are examples of documents you could provide.
Great information there. Thanks for sharing that, Carmen. Jioselin, so can an L-1A manager also perform some day-to-day operational tasks, or must they only supervise?
Great question, Arianna. So for this, so part of the definition of L-1A for manager is that they're primarily doing managerial capacity job duties. So as Carmen just briefly mentioned, the job duties for the manager should, for the most part, the majority be, overseeing the team, overseeing the division. That's the reason that they have the support of their team to execute, the actual, project or duties that need to be performed on the day-to-day. It should be very minimal for the manager to do day-to-day. They should have the support of the team doing that. That's the reason that the structure is set up that way for this visa. But it, again, really incidental would be it. And usually, like I mentioned, the job duties will reflect that, should reflect that.
So how can I prove that I manage a function rather than just employees? What does that look like?
So basically, the function. So we're talking for a functional manager, for example. If it's a functional manager, you're supposed to demonstrate that what you're responsible for is essential and critical to the company. We see that we have filed quite a bit of functional managers, but when I talk to our clients, we talk about that. We say to them, how essential is your position to the company? Because especially if you're a small business, they tend to feel like, okay, you are not having subordinates and you're calling yourself a functional manager, reminding you that a functional manager is someone that has no team under them, but they have to manage the function. Manage it. The word is manage. So it's basically that they don't do the day-to-day incidental like Jioselin said. So you may not necessarily have a team under you because you're functional, but you should have some support from the company somehow to help you not do the day-to-day. What USCIS wants to know is that, even USCIS in the past has come back and said things like, if just picture the functional manager, are they a person that if you were to pull them out and they don't do that job role tomorrow, will your company survive? If you say, oh, it's going to survive with not much problems, then really it's not essential and critical. It has to be a position that really is going to impact the company in a significant way. And you have to demonstrate that through emails, documents, client emails, work product, material that you prepare, any evidence to show that you actually manage the function, but that you're not doing the actual day-to-day yourself, and that your position is critical. Maybe you're bringing in a lot of money, productivity. The product is a product that not many people know. Perhaps you know this product line very well, nobody else does. You want to expand your company, and it's going to really generate a lot of revenue. So show evidence to demonstrate that, to bring life to that, what you're saying. Not just saying it in a letter, but actually providing evidence to back it up.
Great information there. So, what key responsibilities should an executive emphasize in an L-1A petition? Jioselin?
Well, for executive, so similar to what we discussed for managerial, the job duties are for sure where you're going to reflect the executive nature of the definition, like Carmen mentioned earlier, right? So the executive should be focusing in their job duties, showing how they, have the ability to make wide decision making for the company, that's going to steer the company, maybe if they're going to branch out into a different arena, like a different sector within their industry, if they're going to innovate, if they're going to, update their core values, update, opening a new office in a new country. So those are decisions that, affect the overall, viability of the company. Those are things that the executive would be reflecting on their job duties. And of course, with the support of their management, right? So that they have people that are going to execute their core values, right? They're going to execute what their thought process is for, opening a new office, putting everything in place, right? So they're going to have that set in place through their management. Something that's really interesting to know for the management that, managers that the executive would have is that it's a little bit different from the direct reports that managers have. For the definition of L-1A, because managers for executives or people direct reports for executives, they don't need a degree per se. It's not actually clear in the regulations that that's required, but of course their title and their job description should reflect that they have management level job duties under the executive individual for the L-1A.
Oh, great to know. And to dive a little bit deeper into that, how can I demonstrate that I primarily direct the organization rather than handle operations? Carmen, do you have any information on that for us?
So directing basically means that they're in charge of making key decisions, like minutes of the meeting. You're having minutes of the meeting with your managers. You're making decisions, like Jioselin said, opening new offices, having how many employees do you want to have? So any kind of documents that you have through emails with other managers, other management, reports, policies that you're changing, maybe, you wanting to change to update the employee handbook for the company, anything to do with the mission, the core values. Again, it's executive decisions, that they would make. And it doesn't have to be, it could be that you're an executive for marketing, you're the vice president of marketing and you have managers under you, and you have different managers of different countries. Or you could be, the highest, most CEO overseeing different types of management. So there is no particular way. It could be different types of companies, but you just have to show that. And of course, the people under you are, executives or other executives, managers under the org chart. So the org chart is another way to show that, and it's a very important document. It's the organizational structure to show who's to the side of you, who's above you, who's below you, and that you are higher on the line and not so much at the bottom, and you're not just you definitely want to show that, yes, you have management under you, another executive. So there's different ways of showing it. And those are just some examples. It's unlimited. There's so many ways, but these are some of the main ones that we've used or seen, and used for cases.
Absolutely. Great information there. Jioselin, does an executive need to have direct reports, or can they just oversee a business function instead? Is that possible?
Well, for an executive, as we said just briefly earlier, Carmen and I, the executive is really high up in our hierarchy, right, of the organizational structure. So usually, as you're higher up the hierarchy, you're going to need support to execute your policy making, your initiatives, right? So that involves, yeah, you do need management. You do need those managers that you are, making sure they are executing the policies, that are executing the ventures. And you should have enough support for that, because if not, then it's a little bit hard to demonstrate that you're actually having those initiatives implemented if you don't have the support of your managers, right? And just to kind of touch base, I know it was earlier a question of how many direct reports are necessary for the manager in tune for the executive. There's again should just be enough support to demonstrate that you have enough of a team to execute your policy making, your initiatives, and their job duties, as Carmen referenced earlier, the job duties of the subordinates direct reports for the managers should some sort of in tune show that they are executing those things. So if you have a marketing initiative, your marketing person should have those job duties reflected.
Got it. And one more question for you guys. Carmen, how detailed should my organizational chart be, and what key elements should it include?
hmm So, yeah, it's a good question. We often see org charts that are not very detailed, where the client gives us, um, one box and then your subordinates under the bottom below them, and then this indirect below them. But what USCIS prefers to see is an organizational structure of the whole company. So if abroad, for example, you have to provide the org chart from abroad, I always tell clients to make sure that the org chart has all of the departments mentioned in the org chart. What are the names and the titles of those heads of those departments? Of course, you have to have them in the org chart, for the foreign entity where they've worked one in the last 3 years. Of course, they have to have people who are their subordinates on the bottom. So if you're a manager, you're going to have your professionals under them. And if the professionals have subordinates under them, provide those as well. You don't have to put every single title. Let's say it's an IT company and you have 100 software engineers. You don't have to put every single software engineer's name and title, but do put the number. Let's say under a particular product line, okay, I have 10 software engineers, but do put the ones that are to the side of you, above you. Those are the most important. Make it detailed. Don't just give me a one line, here I am, and here are my subordinates and the indirect subordinates of them, but put all of the departments. Make it the officer should see the size of the company, and even again, if the company's small, it's fine. I mean, we've worked with companies, honestly, that have been 5 or less employees, 10 or less employees, but they basically the main thing is that they don't want to see that they're going to roll up their sleeves and do the day-to-day themselves, that they have a team to help them. If you really look at this whole session of executive and manager, that's the main thing. You have to demonstrate your executive, you have to demonstrate your manager, and they are not going to do that work the day-to-day yourself. That you have those managers under you. For the executive, they're going to help you meet your goals. If you're going to be a manager, that you have those professionals are going to help you meet those goals. That's what the officer doesn't want. So the org chart speaks volumes, and so you have to just make sure it's pretty detailed in nature.
Wow, really great information there. Thanks so much for sharing that with us, Carmen. So that is all we have time for today. So this brings us to the end of our conversation. Thank you everybody for joining us today. A special thank you to Carmen and Jioselin for taking the time. To stay up to date, please subscribe and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. If you have any questions or suggestions, please email us anytime at info@chug.com. Let us know what topic you want to see next, and make sure to join us back here next week for more pressing topics that truly matter to you and your business. Until next time, stay safe and take care, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Carmen.
Thank,
Thank you, Jioselin.
thank you, everyone. Thank you, Arianna. Thank you,
Thank
Justin.
you. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
You
Take care.
too. Bye bye.